Hi, everyone. Welcome to our summer webinar series. My name is Angela, one of the admission counselors here at USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. Today's session, we will be going over our PhD in Gerontology. This is a fully funded program and the first ever PhD in Gerontology. We have two current faculty members and one current student. And first, I will introduce Dr. Murray Jacobson. Dr. Murray Jacobson is an associate professor of gerontology and assistant dean of faculty and academic affairs at the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. Dr. Jacobson earned her PhD at Harvard University in economics. Some of her previous work has focused on the supply side of healthcare markets, analyzing the effects of direct supply changes on access to care and the impact of reimbursement policy on treatment and outcomes. Her current research projects include a large study testing both remote and in-person approaches to increase the diversity of participants in a brain health registry, a study testing approaches to increase COVID-19 booster vaccination rates, and a comparison of differences in healthcare use for persons with dementia in traditional Medicare versus Medicare average. Next, we have Dr. Deborah Ho. She is an instructional assistant professor for gerontology at the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. Dr. Ho earned her PhD in gerontology from USC. She has extensive experience working with older adults, navigate age-related changes, and prepare for life transitions in the US, Singapore, and Hong Kong. She has worked with both community-based and institutionalized older adults, and she is currently investigating the impact of racial concordance between the messenger and health messaging recipient, as well as the impact of patient stories on knowledge retention over time. Thank you so much for attending. And lastly, we have Mikai Singleton. She is currently a candidate of the PhD in Gerontology program. She completed her bachelor's in psychology and a master's of social work from the University of South Florida. And this year, she was also a course instructor for Gero 435, titled Women and Aging, Psychological, Social, and Political Implications. And her research interests are discovering ways to increase services and resources for sexual and gender minority older adults in regards to the end of life and long-term care, support, and services. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And now I will give the floor to Mireille to talk about the program as well as her research.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As was mentioned, I'm currently chairing our PhD in Gerontology program. And so I'll just give you a little bit of a high-level background. So our program, the PhD in Gerontology, began actually more than 3 decades ago. It was the first doctoral program in gerontology in the world, and it has since grown to really have a national and international reputation as the preeminent institution for advanced training in gerontology. The students, and you can hear this from the other panelists who have gone through the program, really are trained as multidisciplinary researchers, and they're really at kind of the forefront of aging research with kind of a background, I would say, in a set of core courses in psychology, sociology, biology, and the policy of aging. And so they get this kind of broad overview background in their first 2 years of the program. That's both kind of theoretical and methodological, but then they apply those kind of tools to very specific aging related issues, whether it's end of life care or long-term services and supports, or decision making with cognitive impairment. Lots of different types of applications kind of use these broad tools. And very early on in our program, really starting from day one, our PhD students are paired with mentors and not only study kind of in the classroom, but learn about how to do research kind of directly from the ground up. And so those kind of the broad training in a range of disciplines that inform the complex process of aging, and the kind of very applied kind of, getting your hands and dirty right away are kind of, I think, key features of our program. And I'll just end again with my high level that I think our students become really leaders in the field of aging research at kind of a broad level, doing work both in universities, at research institutes, and sometimes in kind of advocacy types of roles as well. So that is just kind of a brief overview, and I will pass it along to the other panelists.
Yes, Deborah, if you want to chime in.
Sure. Just to echo what Dr. Jacobson said, it is a multidisciplinary program, and we are taught like many different fields, which proves to be advantageous when we are actually doing our research, and especially when we're publishing, because it gives us a very many different lenses to actually analyze a problem. I particularly did research on palliative care health literacy as part of my dissertation. And one of the wonderful things about studying gerontology is that I was able to incorporate many things from even my past background. I studied mathematics, I did digital storytelling, and I was able to kind of combine both of my past interests into my current interest, which is advocating for older adults, into one solid dissertation. And the beautiful part about USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology specifically is that we have the broad range of mentors. They come from various backgrounds, be it biodemography or sociology or psychology, or Dr. Jacobson herself, a health economist. So you never really found wanting. When you have a question, there's usually someone to ask for advice from. And if not within our own department, they usually have a network, a broader network, be it within USC or beyond USC, for example, like UCLA, which is just a neighboring institution. We always have someone we can turn to have our questions answered. And that's what I really loved about the gerontology program here at USC. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Mikai, if you want to share a little bit about your current experience and your research as well that you are doing.
Yeah, sure. Current experience, I'm at a really interesting point in the program. I'm in the dissertation stage, but I'll try to make it as positive as possible. No, I would say, kind of echoing off of what Deborah mentioned about the wide range of backgrounds and people that we get to interact with in our department is, I think, in my opinion, the number one kind of standout characteristic of our program. When you think about gerontology, you think about aging, I think a lot of people jump to Alzheimer's dementia, and they jump to like your actual chronological age. And I think in our department, it does a really good job of really making you understand that the aging journey encompasses a variety of topics and questions, research, populations. I mean, the aging world is truly boundless. And I think in this department, you really get the opportunity to kind of hone in on what you're passionate about and what you want to focus on, and you're supported in doing that. So what I would definitely say, the point that I've made it to thus far in the program has been indicative of that. and then kind of going into my current research. So I am working on my dissertation research now, which is looking at advanced care planning among older gay and lesbian adults, and specifically looking at potential racial differences we may see within this group. And fortunately, from the support that I got from our department, my dissertation research is funded by an NIA grant, which I think is another, just another way to show how our department is supportive of their students and the success that we're able to have while we're in the program. I mean, although our program is fully funded, we still are encouraged to get our own external funding, which I think is a positive for obviously the school. It looks good on them, but also as people who are going to leave the department once we have our degree, we can take that with us, and that makes us a very highly anticipated job candidate for whatever industry you want to go and work into. So I would say, yeah, that kind of sums up my current experience and, where my research is at right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. I would like to encourage students that if they have any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A little box that's in the bottom of your screen. Feel free to ask any questions, but I do have a few already that students have submitted. I would start off with, let's see, to Mireille. What does a promising PhD candidate look like to the school's admissions panel?
Yeah, I think the number one most important thing is someone who knows what research means. It doesn't mean, we're going to train you to be a researcher. So it doesn't mean you're already kind of a full-on researcher, but I would say many people have the misconception that the PhD is just another level of school, and that, they've done their undergraduate, maybe they've done a master's, and this is like another degree to check off where you're taking tests and maybe writing some papers. But it's actually quite a different experience where you're actually doing the primary research. You're developing the material that someone else might use for their term paper, for example. And that's a pretty different experience than just going to class and taking a test, for example, or writing a paper based on secondary data. And so I would certainly explore research opportunities, say as working as a research assistant if you're still in school, or volunteering in some kind of lab, just to make sure that you know really what it means to be a researcher at least at a basic level, because part of the program is to teach you to be a researcher. So it's not that we expect that from day one, but we do really want to see that it's not that you just are good at school and want another year of, another 4 or 5 years of school. You want to see that you're passionate about learning to do research, about maybe have some particular topics in mind that you're curious about. And yeah, so I would say curiosity, kind of an understanding of the basic idea of research are, for me, the number 1 and 2 kind of issues. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I have a student who asked a question right now. Can you put pending publications on your application if they're not yet published by the time of the application deadline?
Certainly you can say that this is a paper either under submission or, if you're going to do that, I think a good idea is to include that with your materials so the committee can actually see the status of the paper, that, this is really a paper that's serious and will be published one day, even if it's not right now. So definitely, I actually would encourage you to do that. The more you can show, again, that you understand what it means to do research, I personally think the better.
Awesome, thank you. I have a question for Deborah, because I remember you also graduated from the program yourself. So yeah. Students often ask, does my bachelor's need to be in a field related to the program?
I think that's, I've already answered that question, but I'll answer it again. Absolutely not. most of us are probably classically trained in the social sciences of some sort, but we are absolutely open to candidates with varied backgrounds. Case in point, I did mathematics in my undergraduate. I did digital storytelling in one of my graduate studies. So absolutely not. And I strongly encourage people from other backgrounds as well to participate. The training will generally prepare you for all these things. As Dr. Jacobson was talking about earlier, the first 2 years do prepare you for these subjects. I have to admit that it may be a slight learning curve because you have to kind of change the way you think, but then that's true for any classically trained social scientist as well, because most times you're either a psychologist or a sociologist, and when you come in, you have to change these lenses all the time. So you will have the opportunity to train, and I like to think of doing the PhD as owning your own little business. The harder you work at it, you know, the more you reap from your efforts. If you just think it's you know, it's just another program, it's just another degree, then you're really in for something, you know. As Dr. Jacobson said, you need to understand, at least have a basic understanding of what research really is.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes. Let's see. Another question that we have sometimes is if students should contact faculty prior to applying. I don't know if you or Mireille would like to answer on that.
Yeah, so I would say probably some faculty have different opinions about this. I would say it's useful to reach out only in specific instances. So don't just reach out like, hey, I'm interested in your research broadly. It needs to be a little bit more specific than that. So for example, you know, I noticed you're doing research on this, you know, I was thinking of this type of work for my dissertation. Like, is that something you're doing? You know, are you taking students, or just something a little bit more specific as an approach to faculty is not a bad idea, but it's definitely not, I would say it's not necessary to talk to faculty. It is necessary to identify some type of lab or research that looks like a good fit for you. So if you look through the faculty and see like there's no one doing the type of work I'm interested in doing, that might not be a great sign. And that's not just true of us, that's true anywhere you're looking for school, for a PhD. So
Awesome.
yeah, I don't know if Deborah or Minkai might have other views of this. So I open it up to them as well.
I absolutely agree with Dr. Jacobson. It's tough if you don't have the right fit, and it happens. Sometimes you come and I mean, when you interview, you have the best fit, and suddenly that professor leaves as well. So you have to be prepared for any eventuality in the PhD. Also because one, you usually started a bit later in life, and life happens beyond the PhD as well. So a lot of things are constantly in flux, they're changing, and you have to be very, very open, very flexible. And definitely it always helps to have someone who's able to mentor you, period.
Awesome. Thank you. We did have a student ask about the timeline for international students to apply for the program, and I could just talk about it briefly. So the application process is pretty similar to those that are domestic students. There might be extra paperwork in terms of like transcripts or whether transcripts need to be translated, but the deadline is still the same for all students. We do have a December 1st hard deadline for the application. And then there will be a review process, and you will be contacted for further information if we need, whether that be more documents or you're going to be approved for the next step in the application process. So nothing really changes. And I still encourage students to apply for the fall of 2024. Applications will open up in, I would say, late September, maybe early October. But yeah, December 1st hard deadline. So awesome. We have another question. Oh, yes, Deborah.
Before that, Angela, I'm just going to interrupt real quickly. Yeah, I also strongly encourage international students to apply. I myself am an international student, and I've had a wonderful experience at USC. I'm originally from Malaysia. In fact, that's where I am right now. And it's really great to know that opportunities that I cannot find sometimes in my own home country is readily available in the US. And not just in terms of school, even beyond that, one of the fun things I did as a PhD student was actually to live in a retirement community. And so I got to work really closely with older adults. I was conducting workshops for them, exercise programs and whatnot. And that experience really helped me in preparing my own study when I was working on my dissertation research. So strongly encourage international students to apply. And of course, if you ever have any other questions, I'm happy to respond via email after.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Deborah. We have a student ask, and this would be a good segue for Mikai. They asked, is the program small, as in would you get to know or be close with the other people in the program, or is it a larger program?
The program in nature is actually pretty, it's on the small side. I would say the cohort, I came into the program in the fall of 2018, and I was actually one of the largest cohorts. I think it was 7 or 8 of us, and that's not typically the case. So normally, and then after that, the cohorts that came after me were like 4, 3, 2. So it's a small program. So you definitely get to know the people who come in the same time as you, but also too, because of the nature of our program, we have what's called roundtable chairs. So that's 2 current PhD students in our program have this type of leadership position. And their role is to put together social events for us to take part in, as well as, academic career workshops for us to take part in as well. And doing those types of things really creates a sense of community and a sense of support within us all as current PhD students. And that's super helpful because a lot of us are in different labs, and some of us are in labs with professors or faculty who don't have a large lab. So we may be the only PhD student or one, or maybe just 2 of us. Some of us are matriculating out of the program. So you may have started with having several PhD students in your lab with you, but as the time goes on, people are graduating and moving on. So it's a great way to kind of still have that sense of community, and you get to know each other pretty well. But I also too, it's up to you. Like Deborah mentioned, there is life beyond the PhD. We have a very, I know some people, the word diverse makes people feel a certain way, but in this instance, diverseness really is truly in our program when it comes to the life stages people are in their program. People have families, people have spouses, people are living with other loved ones or family members. Some of us are moving from across the country, which was in my case. I came from the East Coast out here to the West Coast. So you really just get a diverse group of students coming together, all doing a PhD around similar time. So you do bond off of that experience. But all in all, to answer the question, it's small in nature for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Another question we have is, does it often take students more than one try to get into either of the programs? Yeah, what we look for is for candidates that are really focused, as Dr. Jacobson mentioned, focused on the research, and we try to bring the best students, into the program and really look at, as I said, the research and what they want to do beyond the PhD program as well. So trying to bring in the best candidates, trying to make sure, of course, all your paperwork and the application is complete, but bringing the best candidates as we can to each program. So Mikai, let's see, you mentioned it a little briefly, but where are some of our PhD graduates, or what do they have planned after graduating, after, post-employment?
I think it's varied. I think some of our students, some of my colleagues and my peers have gone off and gone the traditional academic route. So they've done postdoc positions, transitioned into faculty positions, or some have transitioned right into faculty positions. They didn't do postdocs. Some have gone into industry, so working for the private sector. And then others, I think it just kind of depends on, what they want to do. They're still kind of figuring it out, but we've seen it. I've seen personally on both ends. I've seen some of my colleagues go into postdoc positions, and then I've seen some of them go into private sector. So you see a mix. I do think that our department, I think it's normal. I will say this. I think it's normal as an incoming student and starting the program. It's normal for you to change your mind. So don't think coming in that you might come in and say, I'm going to do this way, and this is what I want. And if that's how you stay, absolutely. But I would say do not be scared of changing your mind, because a great opportunity may come up for you that allows you to still be involved in research. You just may be in the academia environment, and vice versa. You want to do research, but there's not non-academia jobs available. So you have to go into the academic environment. It really just all depends. I think one of our faculty members, who she used to be over the chair of our program, she said, if you want an academic job, she's like, that's all depending on what schools are hiring and what's available. That may be what you want, but nothing may be available for you at that time. And it may not be the right fit wherever you go interview at. So don't let that, dissuade you from wanting to go that route, but just keep that in mind, that it's all about supply and demand too. And to piggyback off the question that you answered a person about applying multiple times, I would say where that comes into play is about reaching out to faculty. And like Dr. Jacobson said, asking them if they're taking a student, funding, whatever that may be for them, how they fund their students, because that can better help you figure out, oh, maybe I should wait a year and apply for the next cycle, or maybe I should go pursue a master's degree or another 1-year certificate program, whatever the case may be, to get some more skills. And that may make me a better candidate. That's where I think reaching out to faculty may be of use to you, because you're kind of on the fence of being like, well, I want to apply, but I feel like, would you suggest this? I like your research. I want to work with you. And you can kind of have those type of conversations with faculty.
Awesome. Thank you. If Mireille or Deborah want to add on.
I would just second the comment about you don't need to know everything at the outset. And, a big part of the process, both what your job is going to be, even what you're actually going to study, is something you kind of discover along the way. So I like highlighted that I want you to understand, if you're going to apply, I want you to understand what research is and have some broad ideas of your interests, but it doesn't have to, it for most people, I think it's not going to be super specific and it's going to change. And so that is fine and good and reasonable and expected. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of underscore that excellent point. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's absolutely okay to change. I changed my topic like twice and I'm done. So it's not the end of the world.
Great. Let's see. Then let's see one more. Let's see if I can find another question. What piece of advice would you give for potential applicants? Maybe something to highlight, something they should highlight, or something that you highlighted that, now that you were in the program, Mikai or Deborah, or even Mireille, things that you look for in a good applicant, some piece of advice that they could take with them.
I'll go first. I think advice. Maybe a couple things. I think one, and we keep going back to the application process, but I think that's just an important piece of it, is really, looking at the faculty and having a couple or more people that you'd be interested in working with. I think that's just really going to help you in the long run, because it makes you a more you'll be a more enticing candidate because then faculty may be like, okay, I'm interested in working with that student. And another faculty member will be like, yeah, that fits with my research. And it kind of just goes from there because they can see the collaborative effort, that can be made, as well as, okay, this student has the potential to work with several of us. Okay, it's all going to come down to, who they most want to work with, it being obviously being a reciprocal feeling towards that student as well too. So I would say really, really, really have at least 2 or 3 people that you want to work with, because if you just come in with one, I mean, that's not necessarily horrible. I mean, technically I only had 1 person, but I really had 2. But in this grand scheme of things, I actually only had 1 because the other person I wanted to work with wasn't taking students, and I didn't even know that at the time. So I really only had 1 person that I could have worked with. But I think really do it that way, just because the way our students, and Dr. Jacobson can chime in on this, the way the funding works, although our department does provide us funding, a lot of us are funded through the projects and the research that our faculty advisors are doing. And so that is just a very critical piece, and I think actually is a standout piece of our department as well too. So that's where the mentor relationship connection matching is really important. And if you don't only have 1 person you want to work with, I feel like that limits yourself to actually being a successful candidate into the program. And then another advice I would say too is, I think we've already kind of said it, you're going to change your mind about what you want to do. But just, go with it. And it's okay that your mind might change. Personally, I stayed the same with my research project and what I wanted to do. I didn't have that change of mind, but I watched my colleagues and my peers' projects change and kind of what they wanted to do. And that's just part of the program. I mean, just be open to it, and apply for stuff. I mean, it's these application processes when it comes to grants and it comes to like external fellowships and stuff, apply for this stuff. We have a very supportive department. It's like our business office that we have is extremely supportive when it comes to applying for external fellowships, grants, whatever it may be. Use that while you're here. I mean, the worst thing that happens is they tell you no. And I mean, if that happens, oh well, but I think a lot of people will say that once you leave this institution as a student, you don't get that same support as you do when you are a student, because you're now it's kind of like you're off to do your own thing. So take benefit of the resources that we have in our department, because they are boundless. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a very quick one though, because I've been teaching for a few years now. And I talk a lot to my students about their future career plans and whatnot. And of course, some of them want to apply to the PhD program. I think it's necessary that you be very clear what your motivation for applying is. There are some students who have simply wanted the title of doctor. Sorry to disappoint you, but for one, in our field, we go by first names. But more importantly, just that alone is not going to sustain you during the most challenging periods in the program. So be very clear what that motivation for entering this field is.
Nice. Very important. Thank you. Thank you. If you wanted to chime in, Mirai, or else I have another question.
I'll just chime in on one. So I thought both of all that advice was excellent. Just wanted to chime in a little bit about looking at what people are working on in terms of the faculty, that some, I would say, different people have more or less information on their kind of website about what they do. And so if you see something and you're like, oh, I'm interested, I would dig a little bit further, look at their papers and see like, oh, does that, and you might not understand all of it at this point, but does that topic get me excited? So go a little bit deeper when there's someone or something that kind of piques your interest. So that's it.
Awesome. One more question for everyone. Actually, 2. We have one from a student, and they said, how can we communicate with the faculty? Correct me if I'm wrong, but reaching out to you via email works fine? Okay.
Email is great. And I do want to just chime in, and this is not just me, but I think a lot of us get really busy with grant submissions or we're traveling. And so sometimes I or other people don't respond, and it's not personal. It's that, we got busy and your message got buried. So do not be afraid to send a polite email saying, just want to follow up and, see if this is something we can talk about or whatever, but it's never a bad idea to send a follow-up. So yeah.
Within a
Awesome.
reasonable time frame, though, not like 24 hours later. Like if you don't hear from us for a week, I think it's more than reasonable for you to reach out again.
Perfect. Awesome. And then a student asked, is there a face-to-face portion in the application process? So for students that once we review your application, and then you will be notified if you will be moving on to the next step of the application process, which will include interviewing with the committee that is reviewing your application. But I want to end this session on a fun question about your favorite memory within the program, as a faculty member, as a student, whether that be a conference you attended or just, a memory that you would like to share with everyone.
Do the student, yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Deborah, I might take ours may be the same if we're thinking on the same wavelength. But I would say probably because so part of our program as students, we have to attend a conference every year, which is the Gerontological Society of America conference, GSA for short. And one of the things that we enjoy about attending that conference is, one, we get to present our research, obviously, whether it be poster or paper presentation, however it may be, but also too, just as us being PhD students, it's a time for us to get together and just have some fun outside of the program. And I think a lot of times we develop a stronger bond with each other and get to have, conversations and just fellowship with each other in ways that we may not do while we're in the program when we're back here at USC, because those first 2 years and then from then on out are just kind of a whirlwind, but also we just get, with lab work and whatever you have to do, you get very busy. So it's a nice time for during the year to get to know each other better. So I think as students, that's a memory that's always enjoyable, and I look forward to that conference every year.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the best part of that conference is our annual social networking event. Leonard Davis School of Gerontology always puts on a really, really good show. And that's also when, not just among your peers, there's this barrier that we sometimes as students may feel with our mentors or other professors. That's also a good time to kind of break those barriers, because it's a very informal setting and very neutral, right? Because you're not in your own space. But definitely that is always a great time. And just being at USC, generally speaking, I personally have enjoyed everything that USC has had to offer, not just gerontology. I mean, gerontology does some great lunches. We always offer great food. And they really take care of us as PhD students. So I always appreciated that. Then the access to professors. I mean, if you're fangirling or whatever the word is, about certain researchers, very likely you will have some opportunity to meet with them. The resources, including the programs that the university provides, such as the excellent Visions and Voices program. I really love it because you get to meet with, not directly, of course, but really, really interesting people. Like this past year, we had, Mikai, what's her name, please? I forget. The 1619 project.
Nicole Hannah-Jones, yeah.
Hannah,
I don't know if was she Visions and Voices?
Yes, she
was. Okay, in connection with Annenberg. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's USC just has some really, really, really great programs, and just the fact that having the name, the USC name, when you send emails out to people, even alum who are graduated a very long time ago, who may be in very busy positions, just being able to get even 5 minutes of their time because you're a Trojan really speaks volumes of the reputation we have built, the camaraderie that we encourage and promote within the university. And it bodes well for most of our futures, I like to think. So.
Great. Thank you.
So I'll just tell you it isn't a one moment, but this past semester, this spring, I taught what's called like the multidisciplinary research seminar for the PhD students. It was mostly students kind of in their second, third year, starting to really write their dissertation papers. And the thing that I loved the most was there's multiple things. One, everyone's super passionate about what they're working on. You don't usually come to a gerontology program unless there's something in that aging kind of area that really gets you excited and you feel is important. So I love the passion the students all bring to their work. The second thing, and this I do think is really unique, is how supportive the students are and helpful they are to each other. So in a lot of PhD programs, there's a lot of competition among students. And, it's not that people are never competitive, but I think there's really a sense of like, we are working on important things together and we all benefit when everyone's successful. And so maybe it was the group in my class, but I definitely have the feeling that the gerontology PhD students really work hard to be excellent together.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really saw that really shown during the commencement that we had last month, and seeing the faculty members talk about their students. It was really touching to see, and really just shows the closeness that you get with your faculty member, working closely with them, working on research for yourself, and just the pride that faculty have for their students and what they're going to be doing afterwards. So I want to thank everyone so much for attending. Mireille, Kai, and Deborah, thank you so much again for your time and taking the time away from your day to spend time with us, and hopefully the students have their questions answered. If anyone else has any questions,
Can I just chime in and say, as chair of the PhD, you should feel free to reach out to me. So even if I'm not the person you want to work with, please have no hesitation to reach out by email, again, possibly with a follow-up a week later, but I will do my best to respond to your questions about the content of the program, about other faculty, my own research, etc.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I will put the main gerontology email down below, as well as the phone number for students if they have any questions. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Take care. All the best.
Bye.